And now, as you find a comfortable stillness, you can allow each word I say to be like a soft stepping stone, leading you gently into tonight's story. There is nothing to understand, only the gentle rhythm of a quiet score, the beginning of a strange and beautiful song that your mind can follow, if it wishes, the story of a voice that the world had never heard before. Before we drift too far, if you feel a connection to this place, you're welcome to leave a quiet like or subscribe. Think of it not as a task, but as leaving a soft footprint in the sand before you continue your journey inward. It's also a quiet comfort to know where these stories land. If you feel like it, you can leave a comment with your city and what time it is for you, as we all settle down together under different skies. And so find that gentle darkness in your room, perhaps with a soft blanket pulled a little closer, as we begin our slow drift into tonight's tale. The air is cool. It smells of old stone incense, and the faint, sweet scent of beeswax from 1,000 candles that have burned down to their wicks over the centuries. You are in Rome late in the 16th century. You're nobody important. You are not a cardinal in scarlet robes or a Swiss guard with a fearsome-looking halberd. You are just a face in the crowd, standing in the back of a vast basilica, feeling the chill of the marble floor through the thin soles of your shoes. Music is all around you, echoing in the cavernous space. It's the sound of the divine, the sound of prayer made beautiful. But there's a problem. A very specific, very high-pitched problem. An old rule passed down from the Apostle Paul himself has been interpreted with an iron finality. Let women be silent in the churches. And in this place, that is not a suggestion. It is law. Women cannot sing in the sacred choir. This creates a rather significant logistical issue for any composer trying to write a piece of music that soars to the heavens. Who, exactly, is supposed to sing the high notes? The soprano, the alto, the very parts meant to sound the most angelic and pure. For a while, there have been two, let's call them workarounds. The first is standing right over there in the choir stalls. A row of young boys, their faces scrubbed and earnest. They produce a sound of sublime purity, clear and high. It's perfect, for a time, but puberty, as it does, comes for them all. One day a boy is singing like an angel, and the next, his voice cracks and plummets into a clumsy baritone. The choir is in a constant state of turnover, a frantic race to train new boys before the old ones expire. It's a beautiful fleeting one, built on borrowed time. The second solution is the false DT. IST. These are adult men, often from Spain, who have trained their voices to sing in a high, breathy register. You listen to them now. It's fine. But there's a distinct lack of power. It can sound a little thin, a little hollow, almost like a hooting owl trying its best to sound like a songbird. It doesn't have the muscle, the sheer acoustic force to fill a space like this, to ride over the powerful sounds of the organ and the lower voices of the tenors and basses. It is a substitute, and everyone knows it. So the papal choir, the most famous choir in all of Christendom, has a ceiling on its own grandeur, a divine sound, limited by very human biology. But whispers have begun to circulate, rumors that drift from the shadowed corridors of the Vatican out into the bustling Roman streets. A new kind of singer. A third solution. The idea itself is so strange that at first, you dismiss it as gossip. Where did it even come from? Historians, centuries from now, will still be debating this. Some will argue the practice was a dark echo from the East, from the Byzantine and Ottoman courts where eunuchs served as political functionaries and harem guards. Others will insist it was a uniquely European, and uniquely Italian invention, a desperate, homegrown answer to this very specific musical problem, a case of artistic ambition taking a very, very strange turn. The whispers get more specific. They talk of a secret surgery, an operation that is, on paper, a mortal sin and a crime. The church itself forbids it, promising excommunication for anyone involved. And yet, the choir needs its high voices. So a quiet, unspoken system clicks into place. A fiction is maintained with a collective wink and a nod. A poor family from the countryside arrives in the city with their promising young son. He was gored by a wild boar, some say, or he fell from a horse, or he had a strange medical condition that required a drastic, life-saving intervention. No one asks too many questions. The authorities look the other way, and the church quietly accepts its new, miraculously preserved soprano. One day, you are back in that same basilica. The music begins, the familiar deep tones of the basses and tenors. The boys' section sings its part. And then, a new sound cuts through the air. It's not the light, airy sound of a child. And it's not the strained, breathy sound of a false dtist. It is something else entirely. It has the piercing clarity and purity of a boy's voice, but it is supported by the full physical power of an adult man's lungs and diaphragm, and brilliant. It fills the dome above you, a shimmering column of pure sound that seems to defy the laws of nature. It is the voice of an angel, people will say. It is the sound of heaven itself. But it was born from a brutal, earthly bargain. You don't know what to call this singer, this miracle. You just know that you have never heard anything like it in your life. And the world of music has just been changed forever. The echo of that angelic voice fades, but it lingers in your mind, a sound both beautiful and unsettling. The air in the basilica still feels charged with it. But now we leave the grandeur of Rome behind. The cool marble and soaring domes dissolve, and the picture in your mind's eye shrinks, becoming smaller, humbler, and much, much colder. You are a little boy, maybe 7 or 8 years old, and your world is one of splintered wood, rough wool, and the gnawing ache of a stomach that is never quite full. Your home is a cramped, smoke-stained cottage somewhere in the Italian countryside. In the winter, the wind finds every crack in the walls, and you and your siblings huddle together for warmth under a thin, patched blanket. Your father's face is permanently etched with worry, and your mother's hands are reading draw from work. Life is a relentless, grinding cycle of survival. There is no art here. There is only the mud, the cold, and the hope of seeing the spring. But you have one thing that is beautiful. Your voice. When you sing, something changes. You sing the simple hymns in the tiny village church, and the parish priest, a man whose face is as tired as your father's. Your voice is not like the other boys. It's not just loud. It's not just loud. It's not just loud. It's effortlessly clear, pure, and carries a strange, heart-tugging quality. You don't think about it much. Singing feels as natural as breathing. It's just something you do. One day a man arrives. He is not from your village. His clothes are finer, his shoes are not caked in mud, and he carries himself with the easy confidence of the city. He is a maestro, a music master from Naples, a talent scout on a mission. He has heard whispers, passed from priest to traveling merchant, of a boy with a remarkable voice in this impoverished little corner of the kingdom. Your parents, flustered and awed, usher him inside. He asks you to sing. You are shy, but your father gives you a look that is not a request. You sing the one hymn you know best. The man closes his eyes, a small knowing smile on his face. When you finish, The tiny cottage is silent. The maestro looks at your father, and then they begin to talk. You don't understand all the words. They are adult words, spoken in hushed, urgent tones over the small, rickety table, but you catch phrases. A gift from God. A future of glory. The great opera houses. A life of comfort. The maestro speaks of palaces and kings, of cheering crowds and bags of gold. He paints a picture of a life so impossibly different from this one that it sounds like a fairy tale. Your father is mesmerized. His eyes, usually so tired, now have a feverish glint. This is it. The miracle, the escape. Your mother is quieter. She looks at you, her face a mixture of pride and a deep, unspoken fear. The maestro mentions the school, a famous conservatory where you will be trained. He assures them you will be cared for, educated, turned into a star. And then he speaks of the commitment, the one irreversible step that ensures the voice. This golden gift. He doesn't use the brutal word. He talks about preserving the purity of the instrument. A contract is produced. A legal document that might as well be magic scroll to your illiterate parents. A bag of coins is placed on the table. It's more money than your father has ever seen in his life. Enough to feed his other children through the winter, to fix the roof, to buy a new mule. It is the price of your future. It is the price of your voice. It is the price of your voice. Historians will forever argue about this moment, repeated in countless poor homes across Italy. Were your parents monsters, sacrificing their child for gold? Or were they just desperate people in a desperate time, making a choice that, to them, seemed rational? In a world where half of all children died before the age of 5 from disease or starvation, was this really so much worse? It's a debate that pits our modern morality against the brutal pragmatism of the past. All you know is that your fate has been decided. A few days later you leave. Your mother cries, holding you so tightly you can barely breathe. Your father puts a hand on your head, his touch clumsy and unfamiliar. And then you are on a cart, rattling away from the only home you have ever known. The journey is a blur. The final part is the strangest. You're not taken to a grand school, not yet. You're taken to a quiet room, perhaps above a barber's shop. The man there is not a music master. He has a different set of tools. You are given a drink, something bitter and thick with the sweet, cloying smell of poppies. It's laudanum, an opium tincture. The room begins to swim. The corners grow soft and dark. The men's voices sound distant, like they are speaking to you from the other end of a long tunnel. You feel a strange drowsiness, a detachment from your own body. There is a moment of cold, a sharp pressure, but it's muffled, happening to someone else. There is no great pain, just a profound and final confusion. The official story, the one that will be written down, will be that you had a tragic accident while playing. Maybe you fell badly. Maybe an animal, a pig or a dog, attacked you. Transparent excuses were the currency of the entire system, a shared lie that everyone agreed to believe. You wake up sore, weak, and utterly changed, in a bed you don't recognize. The bargain has been kept. Your childhood is over. Waking up is slow, a groggy swim to the surface of consciousness. The first thing you notice is a dull ache, a feeling of emptiness where there was once something else. But before you have time to dwell on it, your new life begins. The world of mud and wool is gone forever. You are now an inmate, a student, a cog in a machine designed for one purpose, to take the raw material of your voice and forge it into an instrument of unparalleled brilliance. Welcome to the conservatory. The word conservatory sounds so elegant, doesn't it? It conjures images of grand halls and wise, benevolent teachers. The reality in 18th century Naples is a little less romantic. These schools, often run by the church and funded by the city, were more like musical orphanages, or perhaps more accurately, musical boot camps. You are herded into a long, crowded dormitory with dozens of other boys. Some look like you, dazed and fresh from the countryside, knowing look in their eyes. They are all here for the same reason. They are the figlioli, the little sons of the system. The daily routine is brutal, a relentless cycle of work that begins before the sun rises and ends long after it sets. There are no holidays. Your day is a precisely calibrated schedule of lessons, an hour of singing difficult passages, an hour of literature, an hour of musical theory, an hour of counterpoint and composition. And then, after a quick, meager lunch, you do it all again and again, which are often eaten in silence while one of you reads aloud from the lives of the saints. Your maestro is not the charming talent scout who came to your village. He is a taskmaster. He might be one of the great composers of the age, a man whose name will be revered for centuries, but to you, he is a figure of Tarandal. He carries a small ivory baton, not just for keeping time, but for rapping sharply on your knuckles when you miss a note. Discipline is harsh and immediate. For a repeated mistake, you might be forced to stand in a corner for hours, or have your dinner withheld. It is a system built on fear and endless repetition. But amidst the misery, something incredible is happening. You are being meticulously deconstructed and rebuilt as a singer. You learn to control your breath in a way you never thought possible. The maestro makes you hold a single note for a full minute, pushing you until your lungs burn and your vision blurs. He forces you to sing scales and arpeggios at lightning speed, your vocal cords becoming as agile as a violinist's fingers. You practice the messa di voce, the art of swelling a note from a near-silent whisper to a full-throated cry and then letting it fade back to nothing, a trick that will doctor audiences to a frenzy. It's here that you learn the secrets that will make you a superstar. One of the strangest and most vital techniques you are taught is how to sing while holding a mirror in front of your mouth. Why? To ensure that you are singing with an open, relaxed throat, and crucially, that you are not moving your lower jaw. Great singers of this era were praised for singing the most complex passages with a mouth like a statue. It was a sign of supreme control, of the voice being an instrument separate from the body. It looks utterly bizarre, but it is the key to the fluid, seemingly effortless sound you must produce. This is a level of muscular control that no natural singer would ever need to develop. The academic debate about these conservatories still simmers. Were they cruel factories of abuse, churning out damaged prodigies for the pleasure of the rich? Or were they remarkable institutions of learning that gave poor, forgotten boys a chance at a life of fame and fortune they could never have dreamed of? The truth, as is so often the case, is probably a messy combination of both. They were brutal, and they were effective. You see the evidence of this effectiveness all around you. The older boys, the ones on the cusp of graduation, are already celebrities in miniature. They are paraded out to sing for visiting nobles, unwealthy merchants. They get better food, finer clothes. They carry themselves with an air of theatrical arrogance that you and the other younger boys both resent and aspire to. They are the proof that the system works. Your own body is changing, but not in the way of the boys back in your village. While their voices are cracking and their shoulders broadening, you remain different. Your limbs grow long, almost unnaturally so. Your chest deepens, creating a lung capacity that will become the engine of your voice. You do not develop an Adam's apple. Your face remains smooth, your features soft. You are becoming a third thing, something not quite boy, not quite man. You catch your reflection sometimes and see a stranger looking back, a tall, delicate creature with the eyes of a tired old man. You are lonely. You are exhausted. You are constantly hungry. But when you sing, all of that disappears. In those moments, practicing a trill until it is perfect, or mastering a breathtakingly long phrase, you feel a sense of power and control that is otherwise absent from your life. Your voice is the one part of you that makes sense. It is becoming immense, flexible, and resonant. It is the reason for your sacrifice. It is the instrument that was built in that quiet, sun-drenched dormitory, forged by fear, repetition, and the relentless pursuit of a perfect, unnatural sound. The relentless routine of the conservatory becomes the rhythm of your life. The years blur into a series of scales exercises and the sharp rap of the maestro's baton. But you are no longer the frightened child from the countryside. You are a finely tuned instrument, and the strange body you inhabit is the very architecture of your art. It's time to understand the machine you've become. The changes are now impossible to ignore. You are taller than most men, but your frame is delicate. Your arms and legs are unusually long, a condition that future scientists will identify as a classic symptom of the surgery's hormonal impact. Your bones continued to grow for longer than they should have because the growth plates didn't fuse at the normal time. This will give you a slightly gangly, almost ethereal appearance on stage, an otherworldly silhouette. But the most important changes are the ones you can't see. Your larynx, your voice box, has remained small like a child's. It has descended and enlarged like it would have during a normal male puberty. Yet this small, agile larynx is housed within a body that has developed the full power of a grown man. Your chest has become enormous, a barrel-like ribcage with a lung capacity that is, frankly, astonishing. It's this bizarre and unique combination that is the source of superpower. Think of it like this: you have the vocal cords of a piccolo, but the bellows of a giant church organ. This is the physiological secret of the Castrati voice. You can push a massive column of air, controlled with the full force of your adult abdominal and intercostal muscles, through a small, nimble vocal apparatus. The result is a sound of immense power, startling volume, and incredible flexibility. You can sustain notes for lengths of time that seem to defy human biology, launching into breathtakingly complex and rapid passages, what they call coloratura, that a normal soprano with her smaller lungs could never dream of executing. You are, in essence, a biomechanical marvel, a living paradox, and the public is obsessed with this paradox. They know, on some level, what has been done to you, but they romanticize it, mystify it. They don't see the clinical reality, they see a miracle. Rumors and myths swirl around your kind. One of the most persistent and most bizarre is the belief that a castrator's lungs are not just large, but that you have a third lung. This is of course, but it speaks to the awe that your breath control inspires. When you hold a note for over a minute, weaving it through crescendos and dim and endos, it feels so supernatural that the audience invents a new organ to explain it. The daily exercises at the conservatory were designed to exploit this unique anatomy. The endless practice of the meditative, swelling and diminishing a note, wasn't just about sounding pretty. It was a muscular workout, strengthening your diaphragm to a degree that is almost athletic. Your entire torso has become a finely controlled pressure chamber for producing sound. But not everything about this new body is an advantage. While you were spared the acne and awkward voice cracking of puberty, you are now dealing with other, stranger side effects. Your lack of testosterone means you have very little body or facial hair. Your skin remains unusually smooth and pale. More troubling lie. You may develop soft tissue around your chest and hips, giving your body a vaguely feminine contour that becomes another source of fascination and ridicule. You are also prone to early onset osteoporosis, your bones becoming brittle with age, though you won't know the name for that particular problem for centuries. Historians and scientists will later debate the full spectrum of these physical effects. By examining the few surviving skeletons of Castrati, they will confirm the unusual height, the enlarged rictus, and the telltale signs of osteoporosis. But they will also argue about the psychological impact. How did it feel to live in a body that existed in a state of perpetual, manufactured adolescence? To see the men around you grow beards and the women develop curves, while you remain suspended between them. For now, you don't have the language for any of this. You only know what you feel. You feel powerful when you sing, and profoundly awkward when you don't. You are a creature of the stage, and the rest of life feels like a costume that doesn't quite fit. Your maestro knows your instrument is ready. He begins to give you real arias to sing, the kind of music being written for the great stars in Milan and Venice. And as you sing them, you realize that your voice is not just a technical marvel. It has a unique timbre, a sound that is often described as ethereal, haunting, or silvery. It lacks the warm, earthy tones of a female soprano, and it lacks the reedy quality of a boy treble. It is something else, a sound that is pure and piercing, yet capable of profound emotional expression. It is the perfect vehicle for the high-flown emotions of Baroque opera, the rage of a scorned king, the lament of a heartbroken goddess, the triumph of a mythical hero. You are no longer just a boy who could sing. You are the living embodiment of a new aesthetic. Your body, with all its strangeness, has been painstakingly engineered to produce the most fashionable and sought-after sound in all of Europe. You are a walking, breathing, singing work of art, built from a blueprint of sacrifice and anatomical compromise. The conservatory has done its job. The bizarre instrument is complete. Now, it is time to play it for the world. The sterile, disciplined world of the conservatory begins to recede. You can feel a change in the air, a hum of anticipation. Your maestro no longer drills you on scales with the same monotonous fury. Now, your lessons are about interpretation, about drama. He speaks of characters, of heroes and gods. You are being prepared not just to sing, but to perform. Then one day, the news arrives. A letter, sealed with an important-looking wax crest. A new opera is being mounted at the Great Theatre in Naples, and they require a young, new voice for a secondary role. Your maestro has put your name forward. This is it, the moment your entire life has been building towards. The fear is a cold knot in your stomach, but it's mingled with a thrilling, terrifying excitement. Before we see you step onto that stage, it's worth remembering what you're stepping into. This isn't some quaint, well-behaved night at the theater. An 18th century opera house is a chaotic, vibrant, and thoroughly wild place. The lights are never fully dimmed. The chandelier is blazed throughout the performance. The audience is a cross-section of society, and most of them are not sitting in polite silence. The wealthy nobility sit in their private boxes, which are essentially small drawing rooms. They entertain guests, play cards, eat lavish meals, and conduct very loud conversations, often paying only sporadic attention to the drama unfolding on stage. They are there to see and be seen. The lower classes are packed into the pit, the area in front of the stage. They are rowdy vocal and brutally honest. They will cheer for a singer they love and mercilessly hiss or throw our fruit at what? It's a rock concert, a society gala, and a cafeteria all rolled into one. Your job is not just to sing, but to command the attention of this magnificent, distractible beast of an audience. The sound that first cemented the Castrati as superstars emerged not in an opera house, but back in the churches of Rome. It was during the Jubilee year of 1600. Pilgrims from all over Europe flocked to the city, and the churches put on their most spectacular musical displays to awe the crowds. It was here that the Castrati of the papal choir, no longer a secret, were put front and center. They had never heard anything like it. This wasn't the thin sound of false dentists or the fleeting purity of voice. This was something new, powerful, and deeply moving. They wrote letters home, describing these angelic voices in rapturous terms. The myth and the demand was born. Now, that sacred sound has migrated to the profane world of the secular stage. Back in Naples, the weeks leading up to your debut are a whirlwind of rehearsals, costume fittings, and stage directions. You are playing the role of a noble prince or perhaps a young god. The costume is magnificent, a cascade of silk, velvet, and metallic thread. You are given a plumed helmet and a prop sword that feels clumsy and alien in your long-fingered hand. You learn to move, to strike heroic poses, to project emotion to the farthest corners of the theater. It feels ridiculous. You are a tall, gangly youth with a high voice, playing a conquering hero. But this is the convention of opera seria or serious opera. The lead male roles, the primo uomo or first man, are almost always written for a castrati. The audience doesn't see a contradiction, they see an ideal. Your pure, powerful voice represents a kind of idealized, prelapsarian masculinity, a hero untainted by base, earthly desires, or so the theory goes. The night of your debut arrives. The backstage area is a chaos of sweating stagehands and other singers in various states of undress and panic. The air is thick with the smell of candle smoke, melting makeup, and raw nerves. You can hear the roar of the audience on the other side of the curtain, a terrifying, exhilarating sound. Your maestro gives you one last, stern look. Breathe, he says, and fill the hall. Then it's your turn. You walk from the dim chaos of the wings into the blinding glare of the stage lights. For a moment, you are stunned by the sheer spectacle of it all, the rows upon rows of faces, the glittering jewels in the boxes, the sea of humanity stretching out into the warm darkness. A wave of panic threatens to overwhelm you. You take your position. The orchestra plays your introductory music. You take a breath just as you were taught, feeling your ribs expand, drawing on that immense reservoir of air. You open your mouth, and you sing. The first note cuts through the din of the theater like a silver trumpet. A hush begins to fall over the crowd. The card players in the boxes pause, their hands hovering over their decks. The chatter in the pit subsides. All of that restless, chaotic energy begins to focus, to funnel directly towards you. You sing your first aria. It's a piece full of longing, unknoble suffering, packed with the kind of fiendishly difficult trends and trills that were designed to show off your years of brutal training. And you nail every single note. The agility, the power, the sheer, unearthly beauty of the sound you are producing captivates them. You are no longer the awkward boy in a silly costume. You are a vessel for this incredible, supernatural sound. When the aria ends, there is a split-second of stunned silence. And then, the theater erupts. It's a sound you have never heard before, a roar of approval, shouts of bravo and de viva. It is a wave of pure adoration, and it washes over you, intoxicating and overwhelming. In that moment, the lonely boy from the countryside, the miserable student in the conservatory, disappears. A new creature is born, right there, in the blaze of the footlights. You are no longer a person, and your life will never, ever be the same. The roar of the crowd becomes the soundtrack to your new life. That first night was not a fluke. With each performance, your fame grows, spreading from Naples to Rome, then to Venice and beyond. You have officially arrived. You are no longer just a singer, you are a virtuoso, a celebrity, an icon. But this is the 18th century, and fame is a very strange, very demanding beast. Your life is now a whirlwind of performances, travel, and the relentless attention of the public. You are adored, celebrated, and objectified in equal measure. The opera house becomes your kingdom. When you perform, audiences weep, they swoon, and sometimes they shout out so ecstatically during a particularly brilliant passage that they drown out the orchestra. The most famous cry, one that will follow you everywhere, is Evviva il Cielo. Long live the little knife. Jarring thing to hear shouted in a moment of sublime artistic beauty. A stark, public acknowledgement of the brutal secret behind the sound. But to the audience, it's not an insult, it's the ultimate compliment. It is a recognition of the price paid for their pleasure. Your fans are intense. They collect prints of you in your most famous roles. They write breathless poetry about your voice. Wealthy patrons shower you with gifts, diamond pins, jewel-encrusted snuff boxes, and purses heavy with gold coins. The leading ladies of society compete for the honor of being your patron, inviting you to their salons, where you are expected to sing for their guests and be admired like a rare exotic bird. This adoration often spills over into a strange, slightly hysterical form of desire. Women in particular are fascinated by you. In an age of arranged marriages and strict social codes, you represent a kind of safe romantic object. You have the heroic glamour of the leading man on stage, but you are seen as unthreatening, a creature of pure art rather than fleshly desire. They can project all their romantic fantasies onto you without any of the usual complications. Ladies of high society will sigh your name, carry your portrait in a locket, and declare themselves hopelessly in love with you. Of course, the reality of your private life is far more complex, a subject that historians still debate with a mixture of scholarly analysis and gossipy fascination. While the church officially classified you as a man, society treated you as a third gender. This legal and social ambiguity created a unique, and often precarious, space for you to navigate. Romantically, you were both sought after and shunned. Some women were indeed attracted to Castrati, leading to Castrati, passionate correspondences, and occasionally scandalous attempts at marriage. These marriages were almost always annulled by the authorities, who would step in to declare them invalid, reinforcing your status as someone outside the normal bounds of society. You are an object of desire, but you are denied the legitimacy of love. Then there is the strange and specific world of your most devoted followers. The 18th century had its own version of groupies. These were the opera fanatics who would follow you from city to city, attending every single performance, their happiness seemingly dependent on the quality of your trills. They were your defenders and your hype men, starting cheering sections and shouting down anyone who dared to criticize you. And the criticism does exist. For every person who finds your voice angelic, there is another who finds it unnatural, even monstrous. You are a walking, singing embodiment of artifice, and in a world where ideas of nature are beginning to gain currency, you are a target for moralists and satirists. They mock your strange, tall body, your smooth face, your high voice. They see you not as an angel but as a perversion. Life on the road is grueling. You travel by horse-drawn carriage over rough, dangerous roads, staying in drafty inns. Yet you are expected to arrive in each new city and deliver a performance of flawless perfection, night after night. The pressure is immense. Amidst this circus of fame, you meet the other gods of your strange pantheon. You share the stage with other Castrati, each with his own legion of fans and his own legendary ego. The rivalries are intense, often stoked by the public and the opera house managers for publicity. These rivalries could be vicious, fought not with soaring high notes and competitive ornamentation. During a duet, you and a rival might try to outsing each other, each adding more elaborate and difficult flourishes to your parts, holding notes for longer and longer, turning the performance into an open vocal duel. The audience loved it. It was the 18th century equivalent of a rap battle. One of the most bizarre and little-known perks of your stardom is your legal status. In some parts of Italy, the law took a strange view of your condition. Because you were considered to have been the victim of a maiming, you were sometimes granted special legal dispensations. A famous case involved a Castrati who got into a brawl and injured another man. His lawyer argued in court that, as a person who had already suffered the ultimate mutilation, my client should not be subjected to further punishment like imprisonment. And the court agreed. It's a strange, almost unbelievable example of how your unique status could be a double-edged sword, a source of both persecution and bizarre privilege. So this is your life now. A life of roaring crowds and silent, lonely hotel rooms. A life of being adored by thousands, but truly known by no one. You are paid a fortune, more than almost any other musician of your time. You are a superstar. But you are also a spectacle, a curiosity. You walk through the world in a bubble of fame and strangeness, forever defined by the beautiful, terrible sound you make. The applause is a nightly roar, a wave of sound that validates your existence. The gold coins pile up. You are by any measure a staggering success. But the price of that success is not just a memory of a long-ago surgery. It is a debt your body continues to pay, quietly and relentlessly, every single day. The same biological quirk that created your miraculous voice now begins to impose a series of strange and often uncomfortable consequences. As you move into your 20s and 30s, the physical eccentricities become more pronounced. The unusual length of your limbs, once giving you a merely gangly appearance, can lead to joint pain. Your towering height, combined with the underlying brittleness of your bones, makes you more susceptible to fractures. A simple fall that another man might shake off could be a serious, debilitating event for you. This is the specter of osteoporosis, a condition normally associated with postmenopausal women, manifesting in you decades early due to the lifelong lack of testosterone. You don't have a name for it, of course. You just know that your body feels fragile, that your bones ache on cold, damp days, and that you must move with a caution that belies the heroic characters you portray on stage. Then there are the metabolic changes. Your body doesn't build muscle in the same way a typical man's does. You might find yourself prone to gaining weight, not in a robust, powerful way, but as soft deposits of fat around your hips, thighs, and chest. This was a common fate for many castrati as they aged, leading to a pear-shaped physique that was a far cry from the slender, ethereal youth who first captivated audiences. This physical transformation, a source of deep private shame and very public ridicule. The same crowds that adored your voice could be incredibly cruel about your appearance. One of the strangest, most specific health issues that plagued many castrati was a series of what we would now call endocrine and psychological disorders. The complete shutdown of your natural hormone production at such a young age had cascading effects. You are prone to bouts of what your contemporaries would call melancholy, deep, crippling depressions that could descend for weeks or months at a time. This was often dismissed as artistic temperament, the sad clown trope, but modern endocrinologists would likely see a clear link between your hormonal state and your emotional volatility. You might be prone to sudden, inexplicable fits of weeping or flashes of irrational anger. Your emotional landscape is as unique and unstable as your physical one. Historians still debate the full extent of these health problems, piecing together evidence from letters, doctors' notes, and satirical cartoons. Some accounts describe castrati as being perpetually youthful, while others paint a picture of premature aging. The truth is likely that the effects varied wildly from person to person, depending on genetics, diet, and the specific age at which the procedure was performed. A particularly peculiar and little discussed consequence of your state was related to your hair, or rather, your lack of it. While you don't grow a beard, a fact that contributes to your angelic or feminine look, the hair on your head also behaves strangely. As you age, you are less likely to experience male pattern baldness. In fact, many castrati kept a full, thick head of hair well into old age. In an era of powdered wigs, this might seem like a minor point, but it was another small, constant reminder of your difference. You inhabited a body that simply refused to follow the normal rules of aging. But perhaps the most profound price is not the aching bones or the mood swings. It is the deep, pervasive sense of being an outsider in your own skin. You are surrounded by people, yet you are fundamentally alone in your experience. No one else understands the strange dissonance of possessing a voice that is hailed as divine, housed in a body that feels like a patchwork of compromises. You can't share a knowing glance with another man about the nuisance of shaving. You can't gossip with the female singers about childbirth or monthly cycles. You exist in a category of one, even when you are in a room full of your own kind, because the experience was isolating for all of you. This isolation is sharpest behind the curtain. On stage, you are a god, a hero, a king. Your costume, the music, the drama, it all gives you a role to play, a structure to inhabit. But in the quiet of your dressing room after the performance, the illusion falls away. You wipe off the thick makeup, remove the heavy costume, and you are left with this strange, tall, smooth-faced body that belongs neither to the world of men nor the world of women. And you feel the tension of that conflict in your very bones. Your voice, too, is not immune to the passage of time. While it will not break, it can still wear out. The relentless schedule of performing, the constant travel, the strain of pushing your instrument to its limits night after night, can take its toll. You might become more susceptible to colds that settle in your chest, threatening your livelihood. A period of illness that another person could weather easily is, for you, a professional catastrophe. Your entire identity and fortune are tied to the delicate tissues in your throat. And so, you live in a state of constant, low-grade anxiety, hyper-aware of every tickle, every bit of hoarseness, guarding your vocal health with a zeal that others find obsessive. You are the custodian of a priceless, fragile treasure, and the burden of that responsibility is immense. The physical realities of your body are a private burden, but your social reality is a very public performance, and it doesn't end when the curtain falls. You live in a constant state of ambiguity, a walking, talking paradox that 18th century society is endlessly fascinated by, but never quite knows how to categorize. You are neither man nor woman, and this in-betweeners is the source of both your mystique and your misery. On stage, this ambiguity is your greatest asset. You are the primo uomo, the leading man. You play Achilles, Caesar, Alexander the Great. Your heroic characters are defined by their grand passions, their noble rage, their tragic suffering, emotions that your powerful, soaring voice can convey with unmatched intensity. The audience accepts this convention without question. They are looking for an idealized, superhuman emotionality, and your voice is the perfect vessel for it. You represent a kind of mythical heroism, a strength that is not brute or vulgar, but pure and sublime. But step off the stage, and the convention shatters. In the real world, masculinity is defined by beards, by deep voices, by fatherhood, by the ability to command soldiers or run an estate. You have none of these things. You are often taller than most men, yet your smooth skin, your lack of an Adam's apple, and your high-pitched speaking voice immediately set you apart. When you walk into a room, you are met with a mixture of awe, pity, and a crude, mocking curiosity. You are a fixture in the high society salons of London, Vienna, and Paris. The ladies of the courted, or you, fluttering around you, treating you as a charming, talented pet. They might call you their eunuch, their little man, or other diminutives that are both affectionate and deeply condescending. They feel safe with you, confiding in you as they might a priest or a female friend. You are privy to their gossip, their secrets, their flirtations. You are inside the inner circle, but you are never truly one of them. You are their living, breathing art object. Men are often more wary. Some are genuine fans of your art, but many view you with suspicion or outright contempt. They see you as an affront to the natural order. Your enormous fame and astronomical earnings can also be a source of intense jealousy. You, this creature, earn more in a single season than a decorated army officer might earn in a decade. This breeds resentment. In taverns and coffee houses, they tell crude jokes about you, the very cornerstones of 18th century manhood. You might be forced to endure snide remarks or thinly veiled insults, and you must learn to meet them with a detached, professional dignity, because to react with anger would be to play into their hands. This constant otherness has led to some bizarre social customs. One of the most peculiar is the practice of pairing a famous castrati with a famous female soprano, the prima donna. On stage you are lovers or rivals, but off stage you are often forced into a kind of professional partnership, a celebrity power couple. You travel together, you are housed together, and you attend social functions as a unit. This was partly for convenience, but it also served to create a compelling public narrative. It was a safe, sexless romance that the public could follow and gossip about without any real scandal. For you, it can be a source of genuine friendship and solidarity with the only other person who understands the pressures of this life. Or it can be a contractual prison, binding you to a rival you despise. The question of your legal and religious status is a topic of endless, often bizarre, debate among theologians and jurists. The Church, which indirectly created you, officially condemns the act that made you. You are allowed to receive communion, but the question of whether you could be ordained as a priest was a hot button issue. The general consensus was no. Could you marry? As we've seen, the answer was a firm and legally enforced no. You are, in the eyes of the law, a man, but a man denied the fundamental rights of manhood. Historians still puzzle over the contorted logic the Church used to justify employing castrati in its choirs while simultaneously threatening to excommunicate the doctors who created them. It was a masterpiece of institutional hypocrisy, a don't-tell policy on a grand, continental scale. You exist in a social limbo. You are not male enough for the men, and you are obviously not female. The very language people use to describe you is unstable. They call you by male pronouns, refer to you as senior, yet in the next breath might describe your voice or your mannerisms as womanly. You are a blank screen onto which society projects all its anxieties and fascinations about gender. This has a profound effect on your sense of self. Who are you when you are not singing? The world defines you by what you are not. Not a man, not a woman, not a husband, not a father. Your identity is built on a series of negations. For some castrati, this leads to a flamboyant, theatrical personality. If you are to be a spectacle, you might as well be a magnificent one. They embraced the artifice, wearing extravagant clothes and adopting an air of imperious divadom. It led to a quiet, melancholy retreat. They saved their money, avoided the public eye as much as possible, and longed for a quiet retirement, a chance to simply be without the weight of constant scrutiny. You are the ultimate paradox, an artist whose very body is the medium, a public figure with no private place to stand, a man who is not a man. You are a testament to the fact that sometimes the most beautiful art can grow from the most painful and confusing of human experiences. Your voice, this strange and spectacular instrument, is more than just a curiosity. It has become the driving force of musical innovation. The greatest composers of the age, men whose names will echo through eternity, are no longer just writing music and hoping a singer can handle it. They are writing music for you. You are not just an interpreter, you are the muse. Imagine George Friedrich Handel, the great German-born master of the English opera scene. He is a formidable man, a bear of a figure with a volcanic temper and an ego to match his genius. He doesn't suffer fools, and he certainly doesn't suffer inadequate singers. When he first arrived in Italy as a young man, he was captivated by the castrati. He saw the immense dramatic and technical potential of their voices. He realized this wasn't just a substitute for a female soprano. It was a completely new type of vocal weapon. Now, years later, in London, you find yourself face to face with him. He is composing a new opera, and the lead role, the hero, the emotional core of the entire three-act drama, is being written with your specific voice in his head. The process is a collaboration, a negotiation between his artistic vision and your unique abilities. He knows, for instance, that you possess a flawless trill. So he will write an aria, intricate trill, designed to showcase that specific skill and doctor the audience wild. He knows the exact point in your range where your voice has the most ping, the most resonant power, and he will place the emotional climax of a phrase on that very note. He pushes you. He writes passages of such breathtaking difficulty that when you first see them on the page, they look impossible. The leaps are too wide, the runs are too fast, the phrases are too long to be sung in a single breath. But Handel knows your training. He knows about the conservatory, the years of relentless drilling. He is writing music that only you, or one of your kind, could possibly perform. It's a challenge, and it's a tribute. When you finally master the passage, the effect is electrifying. It is music and instrument in perfect, glorious synthesis. This symbiotic relationship between composer and castrati fueled the golden age of opera seria. The plots of these operas, often based on classical mythology or ancient history, were really just elaborate excuses for a string of arias. And these arias were designed as vocal showcases. There was the aria di bravura, aria of skill, full of fast, fiery coloratura to show off your agility. There was the aria cantabile, slow, beautiful melody to display your breath control and the sheer beauty of your tone. There was the aria di portamento, designed to showcase your smooth, seamless connection between notes. The entire structure of opera was now built around your voice. This led to some rather diva-like behavior, which composers both cursed and catered to. A famous, though perhaps embellished, story tells of the legendary Castrati Farinelli and the composer Nicola Porpora, who was also his teacher. Porpora allegedly wrote a sublime new aria for his star pupil. Farinelli, upon seeing it, declared it too simple to plain. It didn't offer him enough opportunity to show off. So, on the opening night, without telling the composer, Farinelli sang the aria but added his own wildly elaborate ornaments, trills, and high notes that weren't on the page. The audience went into a frenzy. Porpora, standing in the wings, was supposedly so overcome with a mixture of fury at the insubordination and awe at the sheer brilliance of the improvisation that he embraced his student, shouting, "My son, I forgive you. There is only one God and one Farinelli." Whether that specific story is true or not, it captures the dynamic perfectly. You were not just a singer, you were a co-creator. The written music was often just a skeleton, a framework upon which you were expected to improvise and embellish. This was your right, your cadenza. At the end of a major aria, the orchestra would pause, and all eyes would be on you. This was your solo, your chance to dazzle. You could interpolate passages from other arias. You could rock it up to a stratospheric high note. You could engage in a call and response with a solo instrument like a flute or an oboe, creating a stunning instrumental vocal duet on the spot. It was here that the true virtuosos separated themselves from the merely competent. Historians still debate the exact nature of these improvisations. Since they were by definition not written down, we can only guess at what they truly sounded like, based on written accounts and the few model cadenzas that were eventually published. But it's clear that this practice placed enormous power in your hands. You could make or break a new opera if you felt the composer hadn't given you a good enough suitcase aria, a show-stopping piece you could metaphorically pack in your suitcase and take to any opera house. You might simply refuse to sing his music, or worse, substitute an aria by a rival composer that you knew was a crowd pleaser. Your ego was now a major factor in the creation of musical history. This power dynamic extended beyond the music itself. Composers had to consider your dramatic preferences. Some castrati were known for their fiery rage arias, while others excelled at pathetic laments. A smart composer would tailor the emotional content of the opera to his star's strengths. In essence, the entire multi-million-dollar enterprise of the opera house revolved around keeping you, the star attraction, happy. You were the sun everyone else, from the composer to the impresario, was in your orbit. You were no longer just a boy with a pretty voice from a poor village. You were a titan of the arts, a living muse whose unique, surgically altered throat was shaping the very sound of the century. Your fame has taken you across the continent, but London is a different beast altogether. This is not the sun-drenched, opera-mad world of Naples. This is a city of commerce, of fog, of fierce political divisions, and of a public that is notoriously fickle. And here, in the 1730s, opera is not just art, it is war. You are no longer just a singer. You have become a soldier, a prize weapon in one of the most vicious and public cultural battles of the century. At the center of it all are two rival opera companies, tearing each other apart for the patronage of the British aristocracy and the shillings of the public. On one side is the established Royal Academy of Music, led by the indomitable George Friedrich Handel. On the other side is a new, rebellious upstart company called the Opera of the Nobility, founded by a group of aristocrats who, for reasons of political rivalry or sheer personal dislike, wanted to destroy Handel. How do you fight an opera war? Not with cannons, but with sopranos, and, most importantly, with Castrati. The primary strategy was to poach the biggest international stars, luring them to London with astronomical fees. The success or failure of an entire season could hinge on which company managed to secure the services of the most famous singer. And you are one of those singers. You arrive in London to a city buzzing with gossip about this rivalry. Pamphlets are printed, vicious satirical cartoons are circulated, and society is split into two fiercely loyal camps. Are you a Handel man or a nobility man? To attend the wrong opera house could be seen as a political statement. The conflict was fueled by the royal family itself, with the king supporting Handel while his estranged son, the Prince of Wales, championed the opera of the nobility. You have been hired by one of these factions, and from the moment you step off the boat, you are their champion. Your fee is staggering, a testament to your market value. The numbers are so high they cause a public scandal, with commentators writing furious articles about these foreign songsters and their effeme, the innate warbling who are draining the nation's wealth. But the companies have no choice. Your voice is their greatest asset. Life in London is a dizzying blend of artistic pressure and social maneuvering. Your patrons, the nobles who fund your opera company, treat you as their prize racehorse. They parade you at their parties, they loudly proclaim your superiority over the rival company star, and they expect you to deliver victory on the stage. The performances themselves are electric with this competitive tension. When you sing an aria, you know that the audience is not just listening, they are judging, comparing. In the boxes are the supporters of the other side, waiting for you to crack on a high note, to show a moment of weakness. Your own fans are equally partisan, ready to erupt into rapturous applause at the slightest provocation to show up the opposition. It's less like a modern opera performance and more like a high-stakes championship sports match. The most famous duel of the London opera wars was between the two greatest castrati of the age, Farinelli, who was hired by the Opera of the Nobility, and Senesino, Handel's longtime star. Their head-to-head rivalry became the stuff of legend, one particular story, likely embellished but capturing the spirit of the time, tells of their first on-stage encounter. Senesino, playing the part of a raging tyrant, delivered a fiery aria full of power and fury, playing the role of a pitiable young victim who sang a soft, pathetic lament. Farinelli's aria was so exquisitely beautiful, so full of heartbreaking pathos, that Senesino, completely forgetting he was supposed to be a tyrant, supposedly ran across the stage and embraced his rival in a tearful hug. Art, for a moment, had triumphed over competition. For you, this environment is both exhilarating and exhausting. You are at the absolute center of the cultural universe, your name on everyone's lips. But you are also a pawn in their games. Your artistic choices are scrutinized for their political implications. The slightest hint of a cold, a moment of vocal fatigue, is not just a personal problem but a blow to your faction. This intense rivalry had a strange and lasting effect on the music itself. Composers like Handel, pushed to outdo their rivals, wrote some of their most spectacular, undemanding music during this period. The arias became more and more virtuosic, the vocal fireworks more and more dazzling. It was a musical arms race, and your voice was the high-tech weaponry. Historians today still analyze this period with fascination. Was this intense competition ultimately good for the art form, pushing it to new heights of brilliance? Or was it a destructive, ego-driven circus that valued spectacle over substance? It was undeniably a period of incredible creative energy, but it was also financially ruinous. The eye-watering salaries paid to you and the other stars eventually bankrupted both companies. Inflated by aristocratic rivalry and your supernatural voice finally burst. When the dust settles, the London opera scene is irrevocably changed. Handel, tired of the divas and the drama, would largely turn away from the Italian opera and toward the English oratorio, a genre where the singers were less powerful and the stories more sacred. The public's taste was also beginning to shift. You won the battles, night after night, with your stunning vocal feats, but the war was a costly one, and it marked the beginning of the end of the absolute, unchallenged reign of the Castrati on the European stage. For now, you are still a king, but the foundations of your kingdom are starting to show cracks. The glittering stages of London and Vienna are your workplace, but they are not your home. When the applause fades and the theater doors are locked for the night, you return to a world that is profoundly and stubbornly quiet. The grand tragedy of your life is not the pain of the past, but the echoing loneliness of the present. You are surrounded by admirers, but true connection remains the one luxury your vast fortune cannot buy. Your private life is a carefully constructed fortress, designed to keep the intrusive, curious world at bay. You live in lavish apartments, attended by servants, your rooms filled with the expensive gifts of your patrons. You have all the material comforts a man could dream of, but the silence in those rooms can be deafening. You eat alone, you read alone, and you spend countless hours simply waiting for the next rehearsal, the next performance, the next journey to another city where the cycle will begin anew. Friendships are complicated. Your most natural companions are other musicians, the female sopranos, the tenors, the instrumentalists. With them, you share a common language of art, a mutual understanding of the grueling demands of your profession. You can complain about a difficult conductor or celebrate a triumphant performance. But even here, there is a barrier. Your fame, your unique physical condition set you apart. The other singers might be your colleagues, but they are also your rivals, competing for the same arias, the same applause. A genuine, unguarded friendship is a rare and precious thing. Your relationships with people outside the theater are even more fraught. The wealthy nobles who invite you to their salons see you as a status symbol, a delightful amusement. You are their tame monster, their pet eunuch. They are friendly, but it is the condescending friendliness one shows to a creature, not an equal. You are an expert at navigating these social occasions, at being charmingly witty and artistically sensitive. You have learned to play the role of the celebrated Castrati to perfection. But it is always a role. The real you, whoever that is, remains hidden. The search for love, for intimacy, is the most perilous journey of all. As we've seen, society has placed you in an impossible romantic predicament. You are desired as a fantasy object, but rejected as a legitimate partner. Despite the official prohibition on marriage, affairs did happen. These were often secret, desperate arrangements, fraught with the constant fear of discovery. A noblewoman might become your clandestine lover, arranging secret meetings, exchanging passionate letters. You might feel a sense of normalcy, of being loved for who you are behind the public persona. But these relationships are built on a foundation of sand. They can never be public, never be sanctioned. They almost always end in heartbreak or scandal. There are famous cases of castrati who attempted to defy this, who fell in love and tried to marry. The results were invariably disastrous. The woman's family would intervene, the church would declare the union void, and the castrati would be left publicly humiliated, a stark reminder of his place in the world. Historians debate the nature of these relationships. Were they genuine love affairs, or was the castrati, with his wealth and fame, sometimes seen as a target by ambitious women? As with so much of your life, the truth is likely a complex and murky mixture of both. This profound isolation leads many castrati down one of two paths. Some, as we've noted, embrace the flamboyance. They become legendary divos, famous for their temper tantrums, their extravagant demands, their larger-than-life personalities. This theatrical arrogance is a kind of armor, a way of controlling a world that seeks to control you. If you are going to be a spectacle, you might as well direct the show. But you perhaps choose the other path, the path of quiet retreat. You become known for your professionalism, your gentle demeanor, your melancholy eyes. You save your money with a ferocious diligence, not for lavish spending, but for a single, overarching goal: retirement. The dream that keeps you going through the lonely nights is not of more fame, but of escape. You dream of Bain, a villa in the Italian countryside, far from the clamor of the opera house, a place where you can live out your days in peace, surrounded by books and a small circle of trusted servants, a place where you can finally stop performing. One of the most peculiar and little-known aspects of the castrati's private life was their relationship with the church. Despite being products of a system the church publicly condemned, many castrati were deeply, conventionally pious. They attended Mass regularly, gave generously to religious charities, and in their wills often left large sums of money for prayers to be said for their souls. It's a psychological puzzle. Was this a way of atoning for the unnatural life they lead, or was it simply a reflection of the deeply religious era they lived in? Perhaps it was a way of connecting with the one institution that, for all its hypocrisy, had been a constant presence in their lives since boyhood, from the first church choir to the conservatories and beyond. So you exist in this gilded cage. You walk through the lavishly appointed rooms of your apartment, your footsteps echoing on the polished floors. You might look in the mirror and see the most famous singer in Europe, a man at the pinnacle of his profession. But you might also see a lonely, awkward boy from a poor village who traded everything for a beautiful voice, only to discover that the voice could fill a 1,000-seat auditorium. But it couldn't fill the silence of a single empty room. For most castrati, the dream of a peaceful retirement remains just that, a dream. The voice fades, the fame evaporates, and they slide into impoverished obscurity. But for the greatest of you, for the one whose name becomes synonymous with the art form itself, the story takes a different, stranger turn. His second act would be even more bizarre than his first. His name is Carlo Bracci, but the world knows him as Farinelli. Farinelli is the undisputed superstar, the Michael Jackson of the 18th century. His voice is a phenomenon of nature, said to have a range of over 3 octaves, with unparalleled agility, and a tone of heart-stopping beauty. He conquers every stage in Europe. His feats are legendary, and his fame is absolute. By the mid-1730s, at the height of the London Opera Wars, he is the most sought-after and highest-paid performer in the world. And then, at the very peak of his career, in 1737, he does something extraordinary. He quits. He walks away from the public stage forever. He is summoned to Spain, a country that has largely been a musical backwater compared to Italy or England. The summons comes from the Queen, Elisabetta Farnese. Her husband, King Philip V, is suffering from a profound, crippling mental illness. We would likely diagnose it today as a severe clinical depression or bipolar disorder. The king spends his days in a darkened room, refusing to wash, to change his clothes, to speak, or to attend to any of the duties of state. Paralyzed by the king's despair, the queen, a shrewd and desperate woman, has heard tales of the almost magical, therapeutic power of Farinelli's voice. It's a last-ditch effort, a piece of musical folk medicine on a royal scale. She hopes that his singing can do what no doctor or priest has been able to do, soothe the king's tortured mind and bring him back to the world. So Farinelli travels to Madrid. He is brought into the royal palace, a place of stifling formality and hushed gloom. He is led to a room adjoining the king's darkened chamber. And there, unseen by the monarch, he begins to sing. He sings for arias, the same for arias, from a handful of his favorite operas. They are pieces by his favorite composers, perfectly suited to his voice. What happens next becomes one of the most enduring legends of music history. As Farinelli sings, the king begins to stir. He listens. After the first night, he agrees to be shaved and dressed for the first time in months. After the second, he begins to speak again. The music has broken through the shell of his illness. It is a miracle. The queen, overjoyed and terrified that the cure might not last, makes Farinelli an offer he cannot refuse. He must stay in Spain permanently. His job will be to sing for the king, and not just once in a while, every single night. And so begins one of the strangest and most monotonous artistic residencies in history. For the next 9 years, until King Philip's death, Farinelli's life is ruled by this bizarre, unvarying ritual. Every evening, he goes to the king's chambers and sings the exact same 4 songs. He is not allowed to change the program. The king, in his fragile state, needs the comfort of repetition. The most famous, most virtuosic singer in the world is now performing for an audience of 1, singing the same short concert on a loop for nearly a decade. It's an almost unbelievable story, and historians still debate the details. Did he really sing the exact same songs every night for 9 years? It seems psychologically improbable. Perhaps there was some slight variation, or maybe the story was simplified over time for dramatic effect. But the core of the tale is true. Farinelli gave up his international stardom to become a royal therapist. His role in the Spanish court, however, quickly expanded beyond royal songbird. King Philip, and later his successor Ferdinand VI, came to trust Farinelli completely. He was given official titles. He became, improbably, a political figure. He was put in charge of all the royal spectacles and entertainments, essentially becoming the Minister of Culture. He reorganized the Madrid Opera, bringing it up to a world-class standard, diverting rivers to make the royal gardens bloom. He was consulted on matters of state. The poor boy from Italy, who was never supposed to be more than a singer, had become one of the most powerful men in Spain. This is a truly bizarre footnote in political history. a government in which a castrati opera singer held significant, albeit informal, political sway. He was known for his calm demeanor, his diplomatic skill, and his lack of personal ambition for traditional power. He never abused his position, and by all accounts, he was a moderating, ungentle influence in the often cutthroat world of the Spanish court. He stayed in Spain for over 20 years, long after his original patient, King Philip, had died. He became a wealthy and respected figure, a living legend. Eventually, a new king, Charles III, came to the throne. Charles was a more modern, no-nonsense ruler, and he was suspicious of the Italian singer's strange, informal power. He politely, but firmly, dismissed Farinelli, albeit with a generous pension. Farinelli finally got the retirement he had dreamed of. He returned to Italy, to a magnificent villa he had built outside Bologna. He lived out his final years in immense wealth and comfort, surrounded by a priceless collection of art and musical instruments, including a collection of harpsichords that had been gifted to him by various monarchs. He was a figure of pilgrimage for visiting musicians and dignitaries, the grand old man of a fading art form. His story is the ultimate castrati success story, a fairy tale of triumph against the odds. But it is also a story of profound strangeness, of a life lived in a series of gilded cages. First the opera stage, then the Spanish court. Farinelli achieved a level of power and respect unimaginable for his kind. But he did so by sacrificing his art, trading the adoration of thousands for the private service of one troubled man. His life is a testament to the unpredictable, almost single, beautiful voice could wield in the 18th century. While Farinelli is living out his strange and gilded second act in Spain, the world outside the palace walls is changing. A new wind is blowing across Europe, a wind of reason, of science, of skepticism. They call it the Enlightenment, and its intellectual currents are beginning to erode the very foundations of your world. The ideas that once made you a superstar are starting to look not just old-fashioned, but grotesque. The great thinkers of the day, Voltaire, Rousseau, Diderot, are championing a new ideal, nature. They argue for a world governed by natural laws, for societies built on reason, and for an art that reflects the authentic, unadorned truth of human experience. And you, the castrati, are the living embodiment of everything they are fighting against. You are seen as the ultimate symbol of artifice, a perverser in the service of decadent, aristocratic pleasure. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, one of the most influential writers of the century, is particularly scathing. He hears a castrati sing in venison, while grudgingly admitting the technical brilliance he is repulsed. He writes about the practice with horror, condemning the barbaric and cruel custom that sacrifices a man's most precious possession for the fleeting amusement of the public. He attacks the unnatural quality of the voice, arguing it's an offense against the proper, God-given distinctions between the sexes. His words are powerful, and they are widely read. The intellectual tide is turning against you. This new skepticism isn't just confined to philosophical treatises. It begins to seep into popular culture and polite conversation, where audiences once shouted, "Long live the little knife," with unthinking adoration. Now the phrase starts to carry a different connotation. It sounds less like a compliment and more like a diagnosis. The magic is curdling into pathology. People are beginning to feel a sense of discomfort, even shame, at the pleasure they take in your voice. Unspoken lie about accidents with wild boars is no longer so easy to maintain. The clinical reality of your creation is becoming a source of public embarrassment. This philosophical shift is mirrored by a change in artistic taste. The very thing that made you a star, your superhuman virtuosity, is starting to fall out of fashion. The new buzzword in opera is reform. Composers like Christoph Willibald Gluck are arguing for a new kind of opera, one that is less about showing off and more about telling a coherent, emotionally direct story. Gluck's famous opera Orfeo ed Eurydice is a sizzle and mark of this new style. He deliberately cuts back on the flores. He wants the music to serve the drama, not the other way around. In a famous preface to one of his operas, Gluck rails against the ridiculous vanity of singers who demand arias that have nothing to do with the plot, simply to display their passages, trills, and shakes. He is, in essence, declaring war on the very aesthetic that you represent. He wants singers to be servants of the music, not its masters. This is a direct challenge to your power. And while many audiences still crave the old fireworks, the intellectual and artistic elite are increasingly on Gluck's side. Of course, the existence of the Castrati was always controversial. For centuries, moralists had condemned the practice, but their arguments were primarily religious, based on the sinfulness of the act. The Enlightenment critique is different. It's secular, scientific, and based on the new, powerful idea of human rights. They argue not that the practice is a sin against God, but that it's a crime against the individual, a violation of his natural wholeness, and ultimately more dangerous line of attack. The scientific community of the day also began to study you with a new, colder gaze. Doctors and early anatomists wrote treatises attempting to explain the precise physiological effects of the operation. They weren't writing as music lovers, but as scientists observing a specimen. Charles de Brosses, a French magistrate and writer, described the castrati in unflattering clinical terms, focusing on their puffy, feminine bodies and childish mind. The mystique of the angel is being replaced by the diagnosis of a medical condition. Historians are still untangling the complex web of reasons for the castrati's decline. Was it primarily this philosophical shift from the Enlightenment, or were there more practical, economic factors at play? The argument is that the reform movement in opera was also a clever cost-cutting measure. A simpler, more direct style of music didn't require the same level of superhuman and super expensive virtuosity. Opera houses, perpetually on the brink of from paying your enormous fee, had a strong financial incentive to promote a new style that didn't rely on you. It's a classic chicken and egg debate. Did the philosophy change the taste, or did the changing economics create a new philosophy to justify it? Whatever the primary cause, the effect on you is undeniable. The ground is shifting beneath your feet. You are beginning to look like a relic of a bygone era, a magnificent, glittering fossil from a less enlightened age. The world that created you, celebrated you, and made you a king is slowly but surely beginning to disown you. The applause is still there for now, but it's starting to be tinged with a new note of self-conscious doubt. The intellectual assault from the Enlightenment is a slow-burning fire, but a more immediate threat to your reign emerges from the stage itself. A new kind of hero is striding into the footlights, and he has a voice that is everything yours is not: deep, powerful, and unmistakably, aggressively male. The age of the heroic tenor has begun. For most of the Baroque era, the tenor voice was a secondary character. Tenors played fathers, messengers, villains, or comic relief. They were the supporting cast, the musical wallpaper against which your brilliant soprano voice shone. The role of the romantic, heroic lead was your exclusive property. A deep male voice was considered too coarse, too common for the refined, idealized passions of gods and kings. It lacked the necessary sublimity, that perception begins to dramatically change. The shift starts not in the grand opera houses of Italy, but in the dear, more populous theaters of France and Germany. Here, in the lighter, more comedic forms of opera, the opera comique and the singspiel, the heroes were always tenors. They played dashing young soldiers, clever peasants, and romantic leads who were relatable, charming, and distinctly masculine. Audiences loved them. This manly sound, once considered unrefined, was starting to be associated with authenticity, virility, and a new kind of romantic appeal. The real turning point comes as the new reform ideals of Gluck and others take hold. As the focus of opera shifts from pure vocal pyrotechnics to dramatic realism, the visual and vocal dissonance of a tall man singing like a woman starts to feel absurd. If you want to portray a heroic warrior like Achilles, the new thinking goes, perhaps he should sound like a man, not an angel. A new generation of tenors begins to emerge, singers with powerful, flexible voices who can handle the demanding music of the lead roles. They develop a new technique, the voix mixed or mixed voice, which allows them to sing high notes with a full, resonant, chest-driven sound, rather than lapsing into a lighter falsetto. This is the birth of the heroic tenor, sound that will dominate opera in the 19th century and beyond. The sound of Pavarotti and his airs. The most explosive moment in this vocal power shift happens in the early 1800 seconds with the rise of the composer Gioacchino Rossini. Rossini is a pragmatist. He sees the writing on the wall. The Castrati are a dying breed, and the public is increasingly thrilled by the sound of the new tenors. So, he begins to write the heroic lead roles in his hugely popular operas for them. This is a seismic change. When an opera like Rossini's Otello premieres, with the tragic, powerful Moor being sung by a tenor, it signals a definitive transfer of power. The tenor is no longer the sidekick. He is the star. This creates a very real, very direct professional crisis for you. Suddenly, you are competing for the top roles with these new, virile-sounding singers. Opera house managers, always with an eye on the box office, see the growing popularity of the tenors. They are cheaper to hire, less prone to diva-like tantrums, at least in theory, and they fit the new aesthetic of dramatic realism. Once absolute begins to shrink, the roles written for you become fewer and farther between. This rivalry was not just artistic, it was deeply ideological. The tenor represented the new, natural man of the Enlightenment and the coming Romantic era. He was a figure of passion, of individualism, of recognizable human emotion. You, in contrast, represented the old world, the artificial, the aristocratic, the divinely strange. The conflict between the heroic castrato and the heroic tenor was a proxy war for the soul of opera itself. One of the strangest, most ironic twists in this story is how the tenors learned to sing so high and loud. They were, in a way, chasing your ghost. For over a century, audiences had been conditioned to expect thrilling high notes from their male leads. The new tenors had to find a way to deliver that same excitement, but with their natural, unaltered voices. This pressure led to the development of the high C, the ultimate money note for a tenor. They were, in essence, trying to replicate the vocal stratosphere that you inhabited so effortlessly. The academic debate here focuses on the speed of this transition. Some musicologists argue it was a slow, gradual evolution over several decades. Others point to specific moments, like the premiere of a particular Rossini opera, as a definitive before and after point. It was likely a bit of both, a gradual change in taste that was punctuated by a few revolutionary, game-changing events. For you, the aging castrato in the late 18th or early 19th century, This is a disaster. The world is moving on without you. You go to the opera and see a younger man with a beard and a deep chest voice, singing the kind of heroic role that was once your birthright. The audience cheers for him with the same fervor they once reserved for you. You are becoming obsolete technology. Your unique, painstakingly crafted instrument is being replaced by a newer, more fashionable model. The loneliness of your private life is now compounded by a new, bitter kind of professional loneliness. You are a king in exile, watching a new dynasty take over your throne. As your star on the operatic stage begins to wane, a new form of attack rises to take its place. Your decline is hastened not just by the changing tastes in music, but by the poison pen of the satirist and the cruel crayon of the cartoonist. In the burgeoning print culture of London and Paris, you become a stock character, a favorite target for public mockery. You are no longer just an artist. You are a punchline. The satirical print is the viral meme of the 18th century. These engraved images, cheaply produced and widely distributed, are posted in the windows of print shops, passed around in coffee houses, and collected by the wealthy. They are a powerful tool for shaping public opinion, capable of destroying a politician's career, or in your case, turning a cultural icon into an object of ridicule. Your physical appearance, the very thing that made you an otherworldly presence on stage, is now distorted into caricature. Your unusual height is exaggerated until you are a grotesque giant, towering awkwardly over everyone else. Your long, thin limbs become spider-like. Your lack of a beard and your smooth features are rendered as offensively effeminate. Your tendency to gain weight in middle age is mercilessly mocked. Your body drawn as a soft, pear-shaped mound of flesh, squeezed into a lavish silk coat. You are often depicted with a huge, gaping mouth, a visual shorthand for your profession, but drawn to look monstrous and absurd. These cartoons are not subtle. They are brutal, direct, and often deeply personal. A famous print by William Hogarth, part of his series A Rake's Progress, shows the wastrel protagonist, Tom Rakewell, holding a long scroll listing the lavish gifts he has given to Farinelli. The message is clear: opera, and its effeminate foreign stars, are a corrupting influence, draining the wealth and moral fiber of good, honest Englishmen. The satire also targets your ambiguous gender. Cartoonists delight in placing you in situations that highlight your otherness. You might be drawn surrounded by swooning, hysterical women, portraying you as a kind of bewitching, unmanly creature who drives rational ladies to distraction. Or you might be depicted in an entirely female social setting, gossiping with old spinsters over a cup of tea, a visual joke about your perceived lack of masculinity. The artists use every visual cue they can to place you outside the bounds of normal gender roles, making you a figure of freakish fascination. One particularly cruel and very common satirical theme is the juxtaposition of your heroic stage persona with your unmanly off-stage self. A print might show you on the left, dressed as Julius Caesar on stage, striking a triumphant pose. On the right, it will show you back in your dressing room, a limp, pathetic figure being fussed over by servants. The goal is to expose the fraud, to tell the public that the hero they are cheering for is nothing but an illusion, a trick playing mutilated man. This public mockery is not just confined to prints. You are skewered in poems and satirical essays, and in the popular comedies of the day. The Italian singer becomes a comic archetype, vain, arrogant, prone to fits of temper, speaking in a ridiculous broken English, and obsessed with money. It's a caricature, but like all effective caricatures, It contains just enough truth to be damaging. The decades of diva-like behavior, the astronomical fees, the legendary rivalries, all of this is now used as ammunition against you. Why this sudden viciousness? Historians offer several explanations. Part of it is simple xenophobia. As an Italian in London or Paris, you are an outsider, an easy target for nationalistic sentiment. Your enormous salary, at a time when many locals are struggling, breeds a deep and bitter resentment. But there is also a deeper cultural anxiety at play. Your very existence challenges comfortable, established notions of what it means to be a man. In a patriarchal society, a man who becomes rich and famous through qualities perceived as feminine, a high voice, a delicate appearance, emotional sensitivity, is a deeply unsettling figure. The satirical attacks are a way for the culture to reassert its own masculine norms, to put you back in your freak show box. This relentless mockery has a real-world impact. It normalizes contempt for you. It makes it socially acceptable to laugh at you, to see you not as a great artist, but as a joke. It erodes the awe and mystery that once surrounded you. The angel is being tarred and feathered in the public square. For you, this is a new and particularly painful kind of torment. You have dealt with professional rivalries, with the loneliness of your private life, with the condescension of the aristocracy. But this is different. This is public humiliation on an industrial scale. You cannot walk down the street without feeling the weight of the cartoonist's gaze. You see the smirks, you hear the whispered jokes. The same public that once showered you with gold now pelts you with ridicule. The fall from grace is not just a quiet fading away. It is a noisy, brutal, and very public affair. The satirical cartoons and the rise of the tenor have chipped away at your pedestal. The world that once worshipped you has found new idols and new modes of mockery. For the Castrati in the twilight of his career, the late 18th and early 19th centuries are a time of profound and terrifying uncertainty. The applause, once a nightly guarantee, becomes sporadic, then rare, then finally silent. Your voice, the instrument that has been your entire identity, is not immune to the ravages of time. While it never breaks, it does change. The legendary agility begins to stiffen. The effortless breath control requires more, effort. The high notes, once so clear and piercing, may become thinner, more precarious. You might develop a wobble, a slight unsteadiness of pitch that your younger self would have found horrifying. You are an aging athlete whose muscles no longer respond with the same explosive power. For a singer whose entire career was built on superhuman technical perfection, even a minor decline is a catastrophe. The opera houses, always chasing the next new sensation, are less inclined to hire you. The lead roles now go to the fashionable new tenors or two younger, more reliable castrati who are still in their vocal prime. You are offered smaller roles, a priest, an elderly king, a supporting character. To stand on the same stage where you were once worshipped as a god, now relegated to the sidelines, is a unique form of torture. Many castrati, unable to face this slow decline, simply disappear from public life. But what does that disappearance look like? For the few, like Farinelli, who were both incredibly talented and shrewd with their money, it means a wealthy retirement in a grand villa. They become gentlemen of leisure, patrons of the arts, living out their days in quiet comfort. But these are the rare, legendary exceptions. For the vast majority, the story is much sadder. Many were financially reckless during their glory years, spending their enormous fees on extravagant clothes, gambling, and a lavish lifestyle they assumed would never end. When the job offers dry up, they find themselves destitute. their plight becomes a cautionary tale. The superstar who once commanded a king's ransom now lives in a rented room, surviving on the charity of a former patron or a sympathetic colleague. Some try to pivot. They become teachers, passing on the rigorous vocal techniques of the old Neapolitan schools to a new generation. But this, too, is fraught with difficulty. How do you teach a natural singer to replicate a sound that was, by its very nature, unnatural? You can teach them breath control. You can teach them ornamentation, but you can never give them your unique instrument. You become a living repository of a dying art, a master of a technique with no one left to truly master it. The psychological toll of this decline is immense. Your entire life, from the moment of the bargain in that small village cottage, has been a performance. Your identity is inextricably linked with the sound you produce and the adoration it inspires. When that is gone, what is left? You are confronted with the man behind the myth, and often it is a lonely, aging figure you do not recognize and do not know how to be. The melancholy that plagued so many Castrati even at the height of their fame can deepen into a profound, life-altering despair in these later years. There is a historical debate about the average fate of a Castrati. Was the Farinelli model of wealthy retirement more common than we think, or was the tragic, impoverished and the norm? The historical record is spotty. We know a great deal about the superstars because their lives were so public, but the hundreds of less successful workaday Castrati who filled the choirs and secondary opera roles have largely vanished from history. Their stories are lost, their fates unknown. One of the most poignant and little-known fates was that of the Castrati who tried to go home. After decades of living in the rarefied air of Europe's capitals, some aging singers return to the provincial towns or villages of their birth. They hope to find peace, to reconnect with their families, to simply be. But this was often a fantasy. The village they left as a boy was not the same, and more importantly, they were not the same. They were strange, wealthy. Their high voices, their refined manners, their childlessness, all of it marked them as outsiders. They traded the loneliness of the stage for the loneliness of the hometown that no longer knew them. So you watch the world change. You might hear stories of a new composer in Vienna, a young man named Mozart, who is writing brilliant, complex roles for tenors and basses and sopranos, but whose major operas feature Castrati in prominent, but no longer dominant, roles. He respects your voice, but he doesn't build his entire universe around it. Even later you might hear of a rising star named Napoleon Bonaparte, a man who is reshaping the map of Europe and has little time for the decadent, aristocratic art form you represent. The world is becoming louder, more modern, more militaristic. There is less and less room for the sound of an angel. The applause has faded, and the silence that follows is the sound of your world coming to an end. The great opera houses of Europe have fallen silent for you. The world of secular music, with its fickle fashions and its new love affair with the heroic tenor, has moved on. But there is one institution that has not forgotten you. One place where your voice is not a relic, but a necessity. It is the very place where your strange journey began, the church. As the 19th century progresses, the castrati disappears from the public stage entirely. The practice of creating them for the opera is now seen as a barbaric monstrosity, a shameful relic of a less enlightened time. The last great operatic castrati, Giovanni Battista Velluti, gave his final stage performance in the 1830s, and his retirement marked the definitive end of an era. The world of opera belonged to the tenor, and the female, the baritone. But in Rome, within the ancient stone walls of the Vatican, a different tradition held fast. The papal edict, "Let women be silent," in the churches was still the law. The most prestigious sacred choir in the world still needed its high voices. For centuries, they had relied on a steady supply of castrati to sing the soprano and alto parts of the great polyphonic masses and motets. And while the rest of the world had changed its mind with its deep institutional inertia, its commitment to tradition had not. So you find yourself back where it all began. The world has shrunk from the grand stages of London, Vienna, and Madrid back to the marble and incense of a Roman basilica. You are no longer a celebrated primo uomo, a hero, a god. You are a chorister, one of a dozen singers in robes, your individual fame subsumed into the collective sound of the choir. For some, this was a gentle and welcome retirement, a return to the sacred music of their youth, a peaceful end to a tumultuous career, who had tasted the intoxicating drug of solo stardom. It must have felt like a profound demotion. The existence of the Pope's singers became an open secret, a source of growing embarrassment and fascination for the world. Tourists visiting Rome in the Victorian era would flock to the Sistine Chapel, not just for Michelangelo's stunning frescoes, but for the morbid curiosity of hearing the last castrati sing. It was a kind of musical tourism, a chance to hear a sound that was rapidly becoming extinct. Writers of the period described the experience in hushed, noting the unearthly angelic, but also disquieting quality of the voices. The supply of new castrati, however, was dwindling to a trickle. The social and legal pressures against the practice were now immense. The newly unified Italian state, which took control of Rome in 1870, was a modern, secular nation that had officially outlawed the procedure. The Vatican could no longer rely on the old, informal system of accidents and back alley barbers. The practice was driven deep underground. A few desperate families in remote, impoverished parts of Italy might still make, but it was becoming exceedingly rare. The choir's directors grew desperate. They were trying to preserve a specific, centuries-old musical tradition, but the human instruments required for that tradition were vanishing. This led to a strange and poignant historical footnote. The Vatican became a kind of sanctuary, or perhaps a museum, for the last handful of castrati in the world. They were protected, employed, and given a home long after they had become obsolete everywhere else. There is a historical debate over the Vatican's true attitude during this final phase. Were they callously clinging to a cruel tradition for the sake of art? Or were they, in a strange way, acting compassionately, providing a refuge for these men who had no other place in the world? The official line was always one of plausible deniability. The Church never formally admitted to recruiting castrati. These men simply appeared, and its charity gave them a position, and most enduring act of the great hypocrisy that had sustained the entire system for 3 centuries. As a member of the Sistine Chapel choir in, say, 1880, your life is one of quiet routine. You sing for the daily services, for the grand papal masses, your voice echoing in the same space where the first castrati made their debut 300 years before. You are an living anachronism. The world outside is one of steam trains, telegraphs, and burgeoning industrial cities. Your world is one of palestrina, of Latin rites, of Latin rites, of Latin rites, of a century. Strange line, the final keepers of a beautiful, terrible flame, singing for the glory of a God whose rules created you, and in a world that has decided it no longer wants you. The 19th century bleeds into the 20th. The world is on the cusp of the modern age of automobiles, of airplanes, of old wars. And in a quiet corner of the Vatican, an old man shuffles through the hallowed halls of the Sistine Chapel. He is the last of his kind, a ghost walking through a world that has long since forgotten what he is. His name is Alessandro Morecci. Born in 1858, Morecci is a child of a different era, a biological relic. The story of his childhood is the classic, tragic tale, now rendered almost unbelievable by the passage of time. He was born with a hernia, a condition that, in the impoverished Italy of the mid-19th century, was a potential death sentence. The corrective surgery he underwent as a boy was the convenient, threadbare excuse for the procedure that would define his life. It was the same old story, the same flimsy fiction, now being played out for the very last time. He was discovered to have a beautiful soprano voice and was sent to study music in Rome. He was a product of the old system, a system that was by then all but extinct. He joined the Sistine Chapel Choir in 1883, at a time when there were still a handful of other castrati singing alongside him. But as the years went by, they aged, they retired, they passed away. One by one, they fell silent until only Alessandro was left. By the early 1900s, Morecci was a figure of immense curiosity. He was no longer just a singer. He was a living historical artifact. He was famously handsome in his youth, and later became a stout, cheerful-looking man, known for his somewhat flamboyant personality and his role as the director of the choir. He was a feature of life in the Vatican, a familiar, if strange, presence. But he was also deeply, profoundly alone in his experience. He was the last man on earth who knew, firsthand, what it felt like to sing with a voice like his. Then in 1902, something happened that would grant Morecci a strange and controversial kind of immortality. A new invention, the phonograph, had arrived. The Gramophone and Typewriter Company, a precursor to HMV, saw a historic opportunity. They set up their bulky, primitive recording equipment in his apartment in Rome and, over 2 sessions in 1900 to a 1900 to a 1904, captured his voice for posterity. He recorded 7 pieces by composers like Bach, Gounod. Alessandro Morecci thus became the only castrato in history to make a sound recording. He is the one thin, crackling thread that connects our modern ears to that long-lost, legendary sound. This fact alone is astonishing, but it also presents us with a host of problems and debates that musicologists and historians have argued about for a century. When we listen to those recordings today, what are we actually hearing? The sound is, to be blunt, strange. It is thin, often unsteady, and carries a kind of plaintive, weeping quality that many listeners find deeply unsettling. There are moments of power and clarity, hints of the legendary castrati sound, but they are fleeting. For many, the first reaction is one of disappointment. This is it. This is the voice that drove audiences to ecstasy. This is the sound of Farinelli. But we have to consider the context. First, the recording technology itself was brutally primitive. The acoustic horn method was notoriously unkind to singers, capturing only a narrow, tinny sliver of a voice's true richness and power. It could not handle loud dynamics well, oft undistorting them into a harsh blare. We are hearing more his voice through a thick, distorted filter. Second, there is the matter of Morecci's age and ability. At the time of the recordings, he was in his mid-40s. He was past his vocal prime. More importantly, by all contemporary accounts, Morecci was never considered a first-rate singer, not even by the standards of the declining castrato tradition. He was said to have a flawed technique and a sentimental, overly emotional style of singing that was already out of fashion. We are not listening to the Farinelli of the 20th century. We are listening to a competent, but not brilliant, church singer at the end of his career. And third, there is the music itself. The pieces Moretti recorded were mostly 19th century works, sentimental and pious in tone. They are a world away from the fiery, Vertesius ex Baroque arias that were the Castrati's original calling card. It's like judging a Formula One car by watching it doctor through a school zone. We are not hearing the voice in its natural habitat. So the great debate continues. Is Moretti his voice a true, representative sample of the Castrati sound, revealing that perhaps it was always a bit stranger and less beautiful than the legends claimed? Or is it a poor, distorted, unrepresentative echo, a pale shadow that does a grave injustice to the true glory of the art form? The consensus among most music historians leans toward the latter. They argue that we should not judge a whole tradition by its last flower. And yet, we listen. We listen to that ghostly voice floating out of the crackle and hiss of a century-old recording. We listen to him sing the Crucifixus from Rossini's Mass, his voice filled with that strange, sobbing quality. We are eavesdropping on a lost world. He may not have been the best, but he was the last. He was the end of the last. He was the end of the line. Alessandro Moretti, that was never supposed to exist at all. You put the needle down on the record, or perhaps more likely now, you click a file on a computer. The hiss and crackle begin, a sound like frying bacon, the audible texture of time itself. And then, through the static, it emerges, the voice. It's high, clear, and undeniably male, yet it's like no male voice you've ever heard. It's Alessandro Moretti, singing across the century. Let's listen closely to one of his most debated recordings, his rendition of the Ave Maria composed by Bach and Gounod. The piece itself is a 19th century creation, a sentimental melody by Charles Gounod laid over the timeless harmonic structure of a prelude by Johann Sebastian Bach. It is a perfect example of the kind of pious, emotionally direct music popular in Moretti his day. The voice enters, and the first thing you notice is the timbre. It is not the rich, warm sound of a female soprano. It lacks that plush, rounded quality. Nor is it the ethereal, flute-like sound of a boy treble. It has more power, more weight than that. It is a silvery, almost piercing sound with a strange, hollow core. Some have described it as disembodied, as if the sound is disconnected from the singer. Then you notice the technique. The way he slides up to notes, a vocal gesture called a portamitone, is very pronounced. He scoops and glides from one pitch to another in a way that modern classical singers are trained to avoid. To our ears, it can sound sloppy, sentimental, even amateurish. But in the 19th century, this was a highly expressive and fashionable technique. You are hearing a completely different set of aesthetic values. Listen to his phrasing. There is a peculiar sobbing quality, a catch in the voice at the end of certain phrases. This is particularly evident in his recording of the Crucifixus by Rossini, where it becomes an almost overwhelming stylistic tic. Is this a genuine expression of religious pathos? Is it a technical flaw, a sign of a failing voice? Or is it a deliberate, albeit to us, overly sentimental, artistic choice? Some see it as the last echo of the Baroque singer's legendary ability to move audiences to tears. Others see it as the bad habit of a second-rate performer. The power is also there in flashes. In certain moments, The voice swells and cuts through the murky recording with surprising force. You can hear the ghost of the Castrati's legendary lung capacity, the ability to project sound with an almost instrumental force. But just as quickly it recedes, becoming thin and reedy. It's an inconsistent sound, a frustrating glimpse of a lost potential. Perhaps the most haunting aspect of listening to Moretti is the knowledge of what you aren't hearing. You are not hearing the lightning-fast coloratura, the strings of rapid-fire notes that were the hallmark of the great 18th century singers. The music he recorded rarely calls for it. You are not hearing the legendary meditative, the ability to swell a note from silence to full volume and back again, because the primitive recording equipment couldn't have captured such a dynamic range anyway. You are hearing a snapshot, a single, faded photograph of what was once a vast and vibrant panorama. The debate over these recordings is, at its heart, a debate about authenticity. Can we use this evidence to challenge the breathless historical accounts of writers like Charles Burney, who described Farinelli's voice as a miracle of perfection? Does Moretti's flawed, strange sound suggest that the whole Castrati phenomenon was more of a buzz or spectacle than a truly sublime artistic achievement? The majority opinion says no. Most musicologists caution against taking Moretti as the definitive article. They argue it's like finding a single rusted, broken-down Model T Ford and using it to judge the entire history of the automobile. It's a vital piece of evidence, but it's a ruin. It tells us more, perhaps, about the sentimental tastes of the late 19th century church and the limitations of early recording than it does about the golden age of opera. A smaller, more revisionist school of thought argues that we should take Moretti more seriously. Perhaps the unearthly, unstrange qualities that we hear are precisely what 18th century audiences found so thrilling. Perhaps our modern ears, accustomed to the smooth, polished perfection of modern recordings, are simply not equipped to understand a sound that was always meant to be a little bit monstrous, a little bit other. Maybe the goal was never to sound like a perfect woman or a perfect boy, but to sound precisely like a Castrati, a third, unique thing. Ultimately, listening to Moretti is a profoundly melancholy experience. You are listening to a ghost of a man, the last of his kind, a ghost of a voice, the final echo of a centuries-long tradition, and a ghost of an aesthetic, a way of hearing and feeling music that is lost to us forever. The crackle on the record is the sound of an unbridgeable distance. You can analyze, you can only sit in the quiet, straining to hear a miracle through the noise. The crackling recordings of Alessandro Moretti are one way we try to understand your world. But in recent decades, science has given us another, colder, and perhaps more intimate way to listen to the past. We can no longer hear the voices of your brethren, but we can read the stories that are written in their bones. In a quiet university laboratory, a scientist in a white coat leans over a long cardboard box. Inside, nestled in protective foam, lies a human skeleton. The bones are stained the color of old parchment, and they are unusually long. This is not just any skeleton. These are the mortal remains of a Castrati, exhumed from a forgotten church cemetery or a dusty crypt, now being studied to unlock the final secrets of your kind. The most famous of these studies took place in the early 2000s when a team of researchers from the University of Bologna received permission to study the remains of none other than the legendary Farinelli. His bones had been buried, moved, and largely forgotten, eventually ending up in a mixed grave with his niece. After painstaking work to isolate his skeleton, the scientists could finally put the myths to the test. The first thing they confirm is the legendary height. The length of his arm and leg bones suggests a man who was unusually tall for his time. Crucially, the ends of his long bones, the epiphyses, show signs of having fused much later in life than is typical. This is the telltale sign of prepubertal castration, the absence of the testosterone surge that normally signals the bones to stop growing allowed them to continue, creating the characteristically long-limbed physique so often described in historical accounts. They also find evidence of the famous lung capacity. While soft tissue like lungs doesn't survive, the bones of the rib cage show signs of immense muscular attachment. His chest was, by any measure, enormous and powerful, the bony framework for the great bellows that powered his voice. But the skeleton also tells a darker story, confirming the quiet price you paid. Farinelli's bones show clear signs of hyperostosis frontalis interna, a condition involving a thickening of the frontal bone of the skull. While it can occur in anyone, it is most common in post-menopausal women, another sign of a life lived with a profoundly altered hormonal balance. More significantly, his bones are riddled with evidence of severe osteoporosis. They are porous, particularly in the vertebrae and the long bones. In his later life, Farinelli must have suffered from significant pain, stiffness, and a high risk of fractures. The skeleton gives silent, irrefutable testimony to his chronic suffering. This intersection of history and science has opened up a new field of academic inquiry. Bioarchaeology allows us to cross-reference the breathless artistic accounts with the cold, hard, biological data. For example, historians have long debated the general health and lifespan of Castrati. Were they fragile creatures who died young, or did they live long lives? The skeletal evidence from Farinelli and the few other Castrati who have been structured, they could certainly live to a ripe old age. Farinelli himself died at 77, but it was often an old age plagued by significant pain and disability. The bones can also answer more specific and sometimes more peculiar questions. One long-standing myth was that the surgery somehow affected the jaw, leading to an unusually large and prominent mandible. This was thought to be another secret to their vocal power. The skeletal evidence, however, has completely debunked this. The skulls of Castrati show perfectly normal jaw development. The legend was likely just an attempt to find a physical explanation for a sound that seemed to defy ordinary biology. Perhaps the most fascinating aspect of these studies is what they can't tell us. They can't measure the psychological impact. They can't quantify the loneliness or the sense of otherness. But they provide a powerful, tangible link to your physical reality. Holding the skull of a Castrati, a scientist can see the small, delicate facial structure that never fully masculinized. They can see the wear on the teeth, evidence of the man's diet. They can see the healed fracture on a rib, a silent record of a long-forgotten fall. It is a way of meeting you, not as a myth or a voice, but as a human being who lived, breathed, and suffered. These scientific studies are not without controversy. The ethics of exhuming and studying human remains are always complex, particularly when they belong to figures of such cultural significance. Is it a justified quest for knowledge, or is it a final, posthumous violation of a body that had already endured so much? It's a debate that pits scientific curiosity against respect for the dead. For now, the work continues, carefully and respectfully. Each new skeleton that is identified and studied adds another small piece to the puzzle. The bones do not sing, but they do speak. They speak of the biological consequences of a brutal tradition. They speak of the physical strength and the hidden fragility of the man who was sacrificed for the sake of a beautiful sound. They are the final, silent chorus in your long and complicated story. The bones has been studied, the last crackling recording has been digitized and analyzed. Your world is gone, your voice is silent. But the ghost of that voice still haunts the modern opera house. The music written for you, those spectacular, superhuman arias by Handel, Haas, and Purpura, still exists. It sits there on the page, a series of impossible challenges, a legacy that poses a very difficult question for modern performers who sings this music now. The dilemma is profound. The instrument for which this music was specifically composed has been extinct for over a century. It cannot be recreated. So the opera world has had to find a series of workarounds, modern substitutes to fill the void you left behind. Each solution has its own strengths, its own weaknesses, and its own passionate advocates and detractors. The first, and for many years the most common, solution was to simply give your roles to women. A female soprano, or more often, the mezzo-soprano, would be cast in the role of Caesar or Orlando. This is known as a trousers role or intravesti. From a purely vocal standpoint, it makes a certain sense. A gifted mezzo-soprano has the range, the power, and the flexibility to handle the demanding technical passages. She can sing the notes, and often. But this solution creates an immediate dramatic problem. The audience sees a woman on stage, dressed as a man, playing a heroic male warrior. It introduces a layer of theatrical artifice that can be difficult to reconcile with the drama. While some audiences embrace this gender-bending convention, others find it dramatically unconvincing. It changes the entire dynamic of the opera. A love duet between Caesar, sung by a woman, and Cleopatra becomes something entirely different from what Handel originally intended. It solves the vocal problem but creates a theatrical one. The second solution, which has gained enormous popularity in the last few decades, is the rise of the countertenor. A countertenor is an adult male singer, a natural tenor or baritone, who has trained his voice to sing in his falsetto register with immense control and power. Unlike the thin, who twice alstetists of the 16th century, modern countertenores have developed a sophisticated technique that produces a strong, resonant, and highly flexible sound. This is, for many, the closest we can get to the sound of a Castrati. It is a man, singing in the correct octave, with a voice that is both powerful and otherworldly. The effect can be electrifying. When a great countertenor sings a rage aria, the combination of masculine stage presence and a high, brilliant vocal line creates a unique and thrilling tension. The countertenor has become the new superstar of the Baroque opera world. But this solution, too, has its critics. They argue that even the best countertenor voice, a sound produced in the falsetto, lacks the sheer, muscular, which was produced with a full-bodied, chest-driven technique. The fundamental vocal mechanism is different. A countertenor, they argue, can give us the ethereal quality, but not the trumpet-like, heroic blast of sound that a singer like Farinelli was said to possess. The debate between the mezzo-soprano camp and the countertenor camp is one of the liveliest in the world of classical music. Then there is a third, more radical, and much rarer solution, the male soprano. This is a very rare type of natural male voice, often resulting from a hormonal condition or an unusual laryngeal development that can sing in the full soprano range without using falsetto. These singers are exceptionally rare, but when they appear, they offer a tantalizing glimpse of what might have been. They produce a sound that has the brightness of a soprano but with a uniquely masculine timbre. This is the true holy grail, the closest modern equivalent to the castrati's vocal production. The ongoing debate about who should sing your roles speaks to the enduring power of the music you inspired. It is simply too good to be left unsung. Conductors, directors, and singers continue to wrestle with your legacy, each trying to find the most authentic or the most dramatically compelling way to bring your world back to life. This has also sparked a debate about historical authenticity. Is the goal to replicate the past as closely as possible, even if it means using a voice, the countertenor, that is itself an approximation? Or is it better to use an instrument, the female voice, that is more powerful and reliable, even if it violates the original gender of the character? There is no right answer, and different opera companies make different choices, leading to a fascinating variety of interpretation. So tonight, in opera houses from London to Sydney, a singer will walk onto a stage to play a role that was written for you. It might be a woman in a Roman breastplate. It might be a man whose voice soars into a register that seems to defy nature. They will take a breath, and they will attempt to fill your impossible shoes. They are all chasing your ghost, trying to solve the beautiful, unsolvable puzzle you left behind. Your body is gone, but your music, and the dilemma it creates, is very much alive. And so, we arrive at the end of our story, not with a final dramatic crescendo, but with a quiet, lingering echo. The journey that began in a cold Roman basilica that traveled through the brutal Neapolitan conservatories in the glittering opera houses of Europe has run its course. The phenomenon of the Castrati, a flame that burned so intensely for nearly 300 years, has been extinguished. What are we left with? Uncomfortable legacy of this strange and beautiful chapter in human history. It is, first and foremost, a story of an almost unimaginable contrast. It is the story of sublime heavenly beauty born from a foundation of earthly, clinical brutality. We are left to wrestle with a deeply unsettling equation. Does the breathtaking beauty of the art justify the pain of its creation? When we listen to a modern counter-tenor sing one of Farinelli's arias, and we are moved to tears by its perfection, are we, in some small way, complicit in the celebration of that original, brutal bargain? It is a question that forces us to confront the uncomfortable relationship between aesthetics and ethics, between the art and the artist, between the price and the product. There is no easy answer. To simply condemn the entire tradition as monstrous is to deny the agency and the triumphs of the Castrati themselves. They were artists, superstars, and in some cases, powerful cultural and political figures. They navigated an impossible world with resilience and, often, with breathtaking genius. To dismiss their art as merely the product of abuse is to do them a second injustice, to silence their voices once again, but to romanticize them, to see only the glittering costumes and the adoring crowds, is to sanitize a history that was rooted in the mutilation of children. It is to ignore the loneliness, the physical suffering, and the profound psychological otherness that was the daily reality for these men. The truth, as it so often is, lives in that uncomfortable, gray space between the victim and the virtuoso. The legacy of the Castrati also serves as a powerful and slightly grotesque mirror, reflecting the obsessions of their time. Their existence tells us about the 18th century's fascination with artifice, its love of the spectacular, and its almost scientific interest in pushing the human body and voice to their absolute limits. You were, in a way, the ultimate expression of the Baroque worldview, a belief in the power of human ingenuity to shape, control, and even improve upon nature, to create a kind of superhuman beauty. But the story also echoes into our own time, asking us questions we might not be comfortable with. We may have outlawed the specific practice, but our culture is still obsessed with the pursuit of physical and artistic perfection, often at a great human cost. We see it in the punishing training regimens of young athletes, the extreme body modifications of performers, the relentless public scrutiny of celebrities. The fundamental impulse to sacrifice the human for the sake of the ideal has not disappeared. It has simply changed its form. The story of the Castrati is an extreme example, a cautionary tale written in the key of C major, but it is not entirely alien to us. Historians will continue to debate the finer points. Was Farinelli's royal therapy in Spain a noble sacrifice or a tragic waste of his talent? Was Moresi his recording a priceless gift or a terrible misrepresentation? Who sings Handel best today? These questions will keep scholars and music lovers busy for generations to come. But for us, as we leave this story, perhaps the most powerful echo is a human one. It is the story of a boy in a poor cottage with a beautiful voice. A boy who was put on a path he did not choose, who endured a transformation he could not comprehend, and who rose to heights of fame he could never have imagined. It is the story of a life lived in the glare of the footlights and in the quiet shadows of a profound loneliness. It is a story about the enduring, complicated, and sometimes terrible things we are willing to do in the name of beauty. The song is over, but the echo, faint and haunting, remains. And so, the final note has faded into the quiet of the room. The story now rests. The great opera house of our imagination is dark and empty, its velvet seats holding only the faintest echo of that strange, beautiful sound. You can feel the silence now, a deep and comfortable blanket. It's a different kind of silence than the one that filled those lonely dressing rooms. This one is safe. This one is for you. Perhaps your mind is still gently stirring, catching the last silvery traces of a melody. That's perfectly all right. Let those thoughts drift like feathers on a slow current, moving without effort, without destination. You might imagine a single candle still burning in that vast, empty theater, its small, warm light a testament to the story that was told. A single point of light in a vast and peaceful darkness. There is nothing left to learn, nothing left to understand. The journey is complete. The only thing that remains is this moment, this quiet, this gentle descent. You can feel your own breath, slow and rhythmic, like a soft, distant drum accompanying you into the softest parts of sleep. The world of heroes and kings, of applause and sacrifice, can now dissolve completely, leaving behind only the profound peace of this present moment. Let the story become a dream, and let the dream carry you now, gently, safely, into the deep and restorative quiet of the night. The candle of our story has now flickered out. If you still see a light in your mind's eye, perhaps another of my videos can help it dim. I wish you the deepest rest. Good night.